they're at this convention as like guests. Like they're going to this convention to see lectures and all of this. Is it their jurisdiction?
I have no idea where they are in relation to where their lab is.
So I'm assuming it's nearby. So it might be their jurisdiction. They're also with the FBI. So like, yeah, anything can be their jurisdiction, I guess. But
they're just such main character energy. They're just taking over the entire thing.
That wouldn't be my first thought. I've talked to people about this before that work in like death investigation, because my family's made jokes before, like, oh, I'd know what I'd do if I found a dead body. I'd call Alice and see what to do. I'm like, I would just call the police and act like I didn't know anything. I don't want to get involved in a different jurisdiction's case. I'm not going to tell people like, yeah, I'm a coroner and I know what to do. They would hate me.
They'd be like, cool, stand over there.
Yeah, they'd be like, great, good for you. Let me do my job.
Right. This is my jurisdiction, lady.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to say a word to anybody.
But Bones does not care. She's like, a bone? Oh my God.
Yeah, she's also a bone? That's my name. She looks at the camera.
Main character energy. And I had one drink. Have you ever wondered what it's like to perform an autopsy?
Ever wanted to know how accurate your favorite crime drama is?
If you're brave enough,
join us inside the morgue.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Inside the Morgue. We're your favorite pathology duo here, Jess and Alice. This week, we thought we would bring back a fan favorite, Bones. So we watched season 10, episode 5, titled The Corpse at the Convention. We're going to get into a bunch of stuff, Bones all included. Gastric contents, time of death, burned bodies, and a whole bunch more. So let's get into it.
Before we get into it, though, we're recording here at Young Junk Studio. And hey, if you want to record too, you can hit up Dylan. Dylan, where can they find you?
They can find me by emailing me, dylan@youngjunk.com. And let me know if you want to take your podcast to the next level or start a podcast. We will chat it through.
Nice. Highly recommend. So this episode of Bones kicks off with Temperance Brennan, aka the titular Bones, freaking out a little bit because she's got to give the keynote speech and she's trying to figure out what jokes to tell. She tries to do a really nerdy, like Schrodinger's cat joke.
And Booth is like, please don't do that.
Booth is like, no, don't do it. So anyway, she's giving her keynote speech at the National Forensic Sciences Convention, and she tries to open with her joke that she practices, but then the fire alarm starts to go off before she can continue her speech. And it seems like there's a fire in the stairwell, and somehow the fire extinguisher isn't putting it out at all, and it's just burning up all the evidence. And it looks like what is burning is the body, which is why it's burning all their evidence. As they exit the stairwell, once the fire is put out, the body's obviously badly burned. So sodium chloride is all over the remains from the fire department putting it out with a special type of fire extinguisher. And based on the bones, our titular Bones is able to see that there's small brow ridges and sharp upper margins of the orbit to suggest that the victim is female. Did you have to do that in school, where in your anthropology class they gave you like descriptions of skeletal features and you had to guess whether you thought they were like male or female?
Was that part of your, like in the anthro course that you took?
Yeah.
You had, like a test on that and you had to say like, yes, this based on these observations and these findings, this bone is more likely to be female. Yeah, I had to do that.
It's not always 100% accurate. Like some people have more feminine features or masculine features depending on their genetics. But yeah, it was an interesting course. And also
I loved anthropology.
Anthropology was so cool.
I bought a little skeleton figurine when I was doing the anthropology class in grad school, and I had it on my desk, and I would like look over during it because my program was all online. So I was like at home taking my exams, and I would just like glance over on my desk and be like, all right, is that bone?
Okay.
No, just like, now my figurine sits at my desk at work, and his name is Teddy Bonesevelt.
Teddy Bonesevelt! Oh my God. That's such a Bob's Burgers name. Bob would be proud. Oh my God, I love that. Also in the episode, the symphysial surface of the pelvis shows that is a woman about 40 years old. And I think like in anthropology, they wouldn't say 40 years old. They give a pretty wide range actually.
They would probably say like at least 30 to 45 or 50.
Yeah, they can give a pretty wide range based on how
Especially for adults. It's just such a wider range than like kids or pediatric cases.
Right, because your bones stop growing at a certain point.
Yeah.
Same thing with like dental. Like if you're just trying to get age off of like dental, like it's easier when you're younger because you have so many like baby teeth still, or your molars aren't in yet. But like once you hit a certain age, all your molars are in, all your wisdom teeth are in, or whatever, and then it's harder to just tell an exact age.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? Is that a red flag?
I think that them looking at all the features on the bone saying female is a green flag, but I think that just saying 40 years old should be a red flag.
Okay, so 1 and 1 so far.
Mhm.
1 and 1 so far. Fair enough. So she was also wearing a lanyard from the convention, and they take it as evidence to hopefully get an ID.
So they have a separate floor and the railing from the remains so they can bring it back to the lab. Or they have to separate the floor from the railing. So they have to like basically saw it all off. And they are running a tuck screen, and that's going to be really difficult on this burned body.
This is another thing I wanted to bring up. So they're at this convention as like guests. Like they're going to this convention to see lectures and all of this. Is it their jurisdiction?
I have no idea where they are in relation to where their lab is.
I'm guessing it's somewhere nearby because they have this thing that they sawed off from the stairwell taken to the Smithsonian, which is what they work out of. So I'm assuming it's nearby. So it might be their jurisdiction. They're also with the FBI. So like, yeah, anything can be their jurisdiction, I guess. But
they're just such main character energy. They're just taking over.
It's
the
just
entire
crazy because
thing.
that wouldn't be my first thought. I've talked to people about this before that work in like death investigation because my family's made jokes before, like, oh, I'd know what I'd do if I found a dead body. I'd call Alice and see what to do. I'm like, I would not. I would just call the police and act like I didn't know anything. I don't want to get involved in a different jurisdiction's case. I'm not going to tell people like, yeah, I'm a coroner and I know what to do. They would hate me.
They'd be like, cool, stand over there.
Yeah, they'd be like, great, good for you. Let me do my job.
Right. This is my jurisdiction, lady.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to say a word to anybody.
But Bones does not care. She's like, a bone? Oh my God.
Yeah, she's also a bone? That's my name. She looks at the camera.
Main character energy. I had one drink.
That is the theme. Yes.
So,
oh my God. That's the name of the
title
episode.
of the episode.
Yeah.
So all these vendors and scientists at the convention are offering like all of their products that they have to help Bones and her team with the remains in the scene.
She is like famous in this universe.
Yeah.
Like she was obviously in this world of Bones.
Everyone's like starstruck when they see her.
I mean, she's the keynote speaker. She's an author. Yeah. So, but still, it's like asking a celebrity to take jurisdiction of the case. Like, hey,
if you're so famous,
you're
take
so
over.
Famous. Yeah.
But so on the floor, they notice a shoe print next to the victim, and it is burned right into the concrete. The security cameras around the stairwell were turned off, so there's no way of knowing who went in and out of that area. Bones' team is working on getting the ID from the burned lanyard, which I feel like they're just doing CSI type tech that isn't realistic at all.
So Angela's doing it, and I do love Angela in Bones. To be fair, I've never watched Bones from start to finish. I've only ever like tuned in when it's like on TV or when we're watching it for the podcast. I've
only ever watched it for the podcast.
I'm forcing you to watch it. And Angela's character, I think I've talked about it before. She was like she was an artist that they found like working in the park doing like caricatures of people, and like they brought her in to do like police sketches of people who like they couldn't identify, like look at the skeletal remains and get a better idea of what they look like in person. She was like drawing them out, and then somehow her job escalated to like hacking in CSI, and like I haven't seen the line in the story where
it escalates
that trajectory. So it's really funny only seeing like really early episodes, and then suddenly she's like a high tech like, oh yeah, I'm gonna use our stuff in the Smithsonian to figure out who this is. What?
She's like, she has like her whole computer from the Smithsonian, and she's like doing all this high tech stuff, trying to get this ID from the burn lanyard with just like half of the barcode and whatnot. So they're trying to take whatever data they can that's still on the strip of the ID to check it against all of the female registrants at the convention. And they're going to use a polymer resin to lift the shoe print from the floor. And I feel like that might be a green flag because
Mhm.
that is something that real like crime scene investigators use
Mhm.
to lift shoe prints. Like it's a very like special technique
Yeah.
that they're trained in.
Yeah. And to reiterate, we are not crime scene investigators, but
It's not my job.
it's not my job. But yeah, that is something they would do. And that's actually one of the ways they got Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, because he had a very specific type of shoe. They found like a shoe print and they were able to like narrow down that type of shoe and who owned that.
There
who
was
like bought that kind of shoe recently in the area.
Sold.
Yeah. In that specific size.
Mhm.
And yeah. Yeah. So
That's a green flag. So
Green flag.
2 green flags, 1
2
red
green,
flag so
1
far.
red. Okay. That's actually better than Bones usually is.
Bones is, I think our last episode of Bones was really bad.
Yeah. When you took anthropology, did your professors say that they hated Bones too?
Yeah.
So did mine.
She was like, if you're going to watch Bones, just know that it's not realistic at all.
I felt so bad because there was...
And then I think a lot of people in my class were like fighting her against that. They're like,
Yes.
I love Bones. And she was like, okay, I'll give it like the early seasons are good. And then it just goes off the rails.
She like...
But our professor had a corgi and she brought her corgi on
Oh, I
screen.
love
And I
that.
was like, oh my God, I'm in love with her.
in my class, she like set us up. She like, all right, hey everybody, I'm here to teach you anthropology. I've been an anthropologist for X amount of years. And then like she put on her slideshow and it was a picture of like Bones, the character. Who here likes Bones? And I knew it was a trap, so I didn't raise my hand. But some people were like, oh my God, I love Bones. And then she put to the next slide and it was a big X through Bones. And it was
No.
like, no, you're wrong. And I
Get
was
that
like-
out of
I
here.
was like, oh my God. They were
She's like, I
set
hate her.
up. I was like, damn. And she was basically like, everything you learned is wrong and I'm going to tell you why. And I was like,
She was great.
she was great. She was great. We had the same professor, guys. I knew that going in, but I just didn't. We took the class different years, so I didn't know if she had said this. She had the same spiel when she taught
I took
you.
it the year before you.
Yeah, yeah. So back to the show. There is a rosy color and creamy curdled texture to the blood on the floor near the victim, suggesting that
gross.
suggesting that the victim died before the fire, and that blood looked weird to me.
Yeah, it was like
I mean, they say it's
just
weird.
like everything about it was off. I don't know if they were trying to just like reiterate that it was like a burned victim and like the whole situation about the burned body is weird. So like
Yeah.
they're trying to make the blood look weird.
It was like foamy looking
Yeah.
and weird. I mean, I've never seen that. I'm not saying it's impossible, but like
yeah, just I don't know.
we'll call it a rosy colored. There's also injuries to the fourth external rib on the left side, and the burned ribs that they show kind of looked like smoked dried like rack of ribs that you could buy from the store, and then they just took all the meat off of it. Which, all right, we're
It
gonna get
really
gross.
is.
To be fair, that's kind of what it looks like, like on a person.
We're all
too.
just meat and bones.
Yeah. You don't.
So many people tuned off right now.
I know so many people just logged out. I am just happy that I'm a vegetarian.
But you get asked a lot that if like, did this job make you vegetarian? You
Nope.
were vegetarian way before.
I was a vegetarian before it was cool. Okay. But we've had people come in for certain cases, and say that like, I don't want to eat meat anymore
Mm-hmm.
because of the way things look. And it's like, wow,
And like when we
it
have
looks like something I'd eat. More food references, but
when we have fire cases that come in, it's really like almost awkward to say, but it smells like barbecue.
It does.
Back
It
in the
smells-
morgue
it's
in like
it's
the
weird.
grossest way possible.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Who's still here, everybody?
Hi guys.
So the injuries to the fourth external rib could possibly be a stab wound, and the tissue damage to the torso seems to confirm that. Was there even tissue?
It looked like just bones in like the small flashes that they showed.
Yeah. There was some like maybe soft tissue, but I don't know. I didn't see much. But they probably didn't
Yeah.
want us to look too closely. Because
Yeah,
they probably
were
didn't.
wrong.
They didn't want us doing a podcast about it. Saying how wrong they
Jokes
were.
on them.
So I think her name's Cameron. Although I did get Vincent Masuka's name wrong in the Dexter episode, and I was really embarrassed when I listened back to it. It's Masuka, not Manuzzo. I was taking the name from NCIS Denozo, who's also a creepy, pervy guy, and I was just mixing up my people.
All the pervy guys.
All the pervy guys. I just made them an amalgamation of one pervy guy. So another doctor, who I won't name because I'm probably going to get it wrong, says there's no signs of liver mortis. So they are guessing that they died 1 to 2 hours before the fire was set. So we've talked about it before. Liver mortis is the way the blood pools after someone dies. So if they die lying on their back, you're going to see blood pooling in like a purplish reddish color on their back. And after a certain amount of hours, like 6 to 8 hours, it'll fix, which means when you poke it, it won't blanch or like it won't turn white where your finger was. So that can help you determine time of death. But what I'm wondering is, this person's
body's burned
to a crisp. How can you see that? And this
They're
is
just
still
making
like
shit up.
in like, I don't even think they're in the lab yet when she says this.
No, I think they're still at the scene.
They're still at the scene when she's like, there's no signs of liver. And I'm like, where are you looking?
It's just all burned.
You couldn't even tell if this was a woman
5 minutes ago.
5 minutes ago.
I think that's a red flag.
Red flag. So what are we at? 2 and 2?
2 and 2.
2 and 2. All right. So Angela does get an ID from the burnt badge, and it was a woman that someone on Bones' team knew. Not only did he know, it was Hodgins who talked and argued with her like literally minutes before she died. You see him walk into the conference, and he's like immediately confrontational with this woman.
Yeah.
I was like, this
And
is...
I was like, I don't watch Bones, and I was like, oh my God, what happened here? Something happened in the previous episode. I have no idea.
We do that all the time. So when Booth questions how he knew the victim, Hodgins says, this is the 3rd time I've been a murder suspect.
Which is such a trope that these shows play into.
In particularly this show and this poor man. Every time he's a murder victim. So yeah, making the main character or side character a person of interest whenever they can, or like a member of their own team, because then they're like even more motivated to be like, we got to prove that one of our own didn't do it. And it's like,
I feel like
maybe
that
they did,
happens
though.
a lot in NCIS too.
It does with Denozo. We did an episode on it. But okay. He's a person of interest. Not just a person of interest. He's the last person to see this person alive and argued very aggressively with her. He shouldn't continue investigating.
No, I think
this
any
is-
logical team realistically would take him off the case.
None of this would hold up in court. None of this, like if they do take it to court and they're trying to convict someone of murder,
Gonna
you're
get thrown
like,
out. This whole case is thrown out.
he had a past with her and he had a vendetta against her that we're going to
And
learn
he
about.
continued to work on all of this
Continued to
evidence.
work on all the evidence. How do we trust anything he did? That'd be my first question.
But you know, he continues to work on the
But
case.
guess what? They let it. They're like, wow, yeah, we
He's the only
know.
person we got.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
So they found olive oil and canola oil from the shoe print, as well as food particles. That, plus the design of the shoe itself, might point to someone working in the kitchen. Maybe a kitchen knife was the murder weapon? ? One of the kitchen workers had clocked out early and was heading home for the day, and Booth stops him. His shoe print is a perfect match for the print they have. A coincidence. They found the victim's empty wallet in the trash of the kitchen, and they found a bunch of money on this worker that they're questioning. He explains that sometimes he goes into the stairwell to smoke weed, but this time he found a dead body, and the place was smelling like gasoline, so he got out of there. He lawyers up in the end, but he's like, I'm not the killer.
He just looted the dead body.
He did.
He didn't kill her, but he stole from a dead person.
But it's probably like 15, 20 minutes into this episode. It's too early
to
for
know the
us
killer.
to find out who the killer is.
That's what my brother always says watching these shows when like they bring in their first suspect. He's like,
It's not him.
he's
It
like,
never
"No,
is.
We're not gonna know for another 30 minutes who it is.
To be fair, the murderer has already been on screen at this point, but no one has like paid attention to him.
I was looking at him.
I was not. I was like, wow, this man.
Wow, a bone. So there's also evidence of striations on the 5th and the 6th ribs, and then on the left, and then the 5th and the 7th ribs on the right, and on an area to left of the margin of the sternum. So the victim is covered in food particles, so they think maybe that she was transported to the stairwell in a garbage can. So she wasn't killed in the stairwell. She was brought from a second location. The dishwasher at the convention venue has access to the garbage cans, and we love this part because one of the doctors working on the victim's body says, I can't even say it with a straight face, looks like the organ gods are smiling down on us. I got a stomach.
It's so cringy.
It's so cringy. And this is something that might be said in the morgue, but maybe not by us, but maybe somebody would say it. But like,
I feel like one of the doctors that we work with who's so old school would say something like this.
You're so right. I know who you're talking about. You're so right. He would. Oh my God. But unfortunately for that great line, we're still gonna have to give a red flag because she picks it up like it's a solid thing that holds shape. And when in reality, the stomach is like a water balloon or something.
Even
like
in a burned body too.
Yeah, it's still very floppy when you pick it up. It's like either, depending on what you ate before, it's either like a partially full water balloon or sometimes like not even full at all, and it's just an empty sack. But we will give a green flag because you could still get stomach contents even from a burned body, which is exactly what we do or what they do in the very next scene. So it's still tied 3-3.
3-3.
3-3. We're giving a lot of flags this episode.
I'm just really excited.
I think usually we get so wrapped up in the drama that has nothing to do with the forensics that I forget.
This was just a really entertaining episode.
Yeah.
There was so much happening. So they pull a piece of Band-Aid off the victim.
Wait. Did we give a red flag for one of the suspects being an investigator?
No, we didn't.
All right, so it's 4-3. It's 4 red flags and 3 because that's a red flag.
You're just tallying them all
Yeah.
up. So they pull a piece of Band-Aid off the victim, and if the Band-Aid was worn, they might be able to get some type of DNA off of it. Odds are against it due to the fire, but it's worth a shot. On the stomach contents that they recovered, the doctor says that based on the digestion, it was ingested around 3 a.m. I think we looked this up, and what did you say?
It's not like, it's very similar to how we've talked about before when we're talking about time of death. You won't give an exact time. You're not going to be like, this person died at 1:03 a.m. You're going to say, okay, between the hours of like midnight and 2 a.m. approximately, maybe. Or like, not even that. We'll usually phrase it like, okay, rigor mortis is set in. It's pretty locked in. We'd say like about 8 hours since they've passed. And I think it's similar for stomach contents, especially because like, I think this is just me theorizing. Everybody's metabolism is so different. Everybody digests things so differently. So you can get like an approximate range between what I was reading, like between a few hours. I'd say like 1 to 3 hours is sometimes accurate. So they do say around. They don't give like an exact time. Like they don't say like 3:21 a.m. Yeah. But they know the important part in the story is they know that it was sometime like early morning, late evening. So she had been out late at night or early in the evening or early in the morning. So I think that's the main takeaway. Which I think you could still get with like an age, not an age range, a time range. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there was also no obvious defense injuries found. So it's possible that she might have known her killer.
Ooh, should we talk about defensive injuries?
We should. Or she was just simply unafraid of this killer. So defensive injuries are really interesting and really helpful, especially in homicide cases.
Yeah, which this is. In this story.
So we'll look for defensive injuries on the victim that comes in. We'll look at so normally like when a body comes in and it's a suspected homicide or even suicides, the hands will be bagged. We'll photograph that showing that the hands are bagged. We'll take them off and then we'll photograph the hands and the forearms and we'll look at the nails and we'll take pictures of those, but we'll look to see if the nails are like bloody, if they're broken or cracked in any way, to see if they were like scratching and trying to like fight off their killer. So like we'll clip their fingernails and save those as evidence and give them to detectives so they can test for the blood that was found in the fingernails and they can like cross-reference if the blood is theirs or if the blood is the other person's. We can also look at like scratching, like if it's a strangulation, we'll look at the neck. And if there's like scratch marks on it, we know that they were like trying to fight.
Trying to like pull it off or like even somebody like if they're trying to fight somebody off and they'll cover their.
Yeah.
So you can look at like forearms for any
That's
kind
a
of
good
wounds. Point. Yeah, you can really get a story from injuries like that. which is important in a homicide investigation.
Which is super important in the autopsy process that
It
we
is.
do.
It is.
That a lot of people might not know about.
No.
The more you know.
The more you know.
The
That's
more
why
you
you're
know.
here. Hi, everybody.
Where were we? So they're looking at x-rays of the body, and this just shows you how old the show is, because they're looking at x-rays on the film, which is really old school.
Yeah.
It's super cool. We have old film that we'll put on in like open houses that we've had in the past. We'll show like film of like a bullet in the chest or whatever. My sister is an x-ray tech, so I think she trained when she was first starting out. Like she did film. But now everything's digital.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was just fun to see.
Ours is all digital now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they see on the bones a spiderweb fracture on the sternum. So it literally looks like a spiderweb. Like everything is like pushing outward.
Yeah. So there was like really sharp blunt force. Well, that's an oxymoron saying sharp blunt force, but there is really forceful blunt force to that area that caused like the crack and spiderweb out.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurt. I don't know why. Like somebody told me once, one of my old coworkers, that she had broken her sternum before playing rugby, and it like hurt me physically to hear that.
Yeah.
Like that just seems
that like hurts me to breathe.
Right. It hurts to breathe. Like what do you do? You can't.
You can't do anything. It's like a broken rib. You just live with it and hope it heals.
My God. Yeah, that hurt.
So the victim was struck and winded, giving the assailant time to stab them. They were able to get DNA from the Band-Aid, of course.
And it shows.
It's a match for Dr. Hodgkins. Because why wouldn't it be the main character as a potential suspect?
But guess what? They still let him.
They still let him work on
be
this
part of the
case.
investigation. So
without question, too, they're like, we know this guy.
Like we trust him. I'm like, do you though?
Do you?
Do you though? So Hodgkins is brought in for questioning for a second time. And he says he cut himself, he put a Band-Aid on, and then he threw the Band-Aid in the trash. And since the killer tossed a bunch of trash onto the victim, that's how the Band-Aid ended up there when they were transporting the body from one place to another. So the scene was staged, and whoever did this knew what they were doing. Cut to the classic scene of the victim's bones cleaned up and laid out to recreate the skeleton. There's if you watch Bones, there's that specific like in between scenes song that they're like and that was playing while it happened.
That was so good.
Thank you. So honestly, it's one of my favorites, and it's cool because we've actually had a chance to do this at our jobs. So yeah, anthropology exams are super cool. I loved being a part of them.
I just love anthro.
Anthro's so cool.
It's just such an interesting field.
Yeah.
And again, it's like it's so niche within the field of forensics, and forensics itself is niche.
Yeah. I've always said if I ever decided to go back to school, which right now I don't want to, but if I ever did, I'd want to go and study more anthro. I've said it on the podcast before. I want to go to the Body Farm in Tennessee. It's just the Forensic Anthropology Center at the University of Tennessee. It's one of my.
It's a dream.
It's a dream to go.
We'll get there one day.
We'll get there.
Our next training that work pays for. We'll go to the Body Farm.
We'll request just to go there. So the indentations on the right side are deeper than on the left side. So this indicates that the assailant is actually. Oh wait, I was confused by how they phrased this because. So I'm facing you right now.
Hi.
Your right is my left.
Mm-hmm.
So that would mean I'm hitting you with my left if I'm hitting you on the right side. But they said that it was right-handed in the show. And then, spoiler alert, there's a scene before they actually catch the killer where you see him doing something with his left hand, which I think was meant to be like, oh, this is the killer because he's fighting with his left hand.
But I didn't even think about that.
They said it weird
each other and we're opposite.
Yeah. Because they're facing them to stab them in the front. And they're saying, oh, like the side on the right has more blows. So they must have been stabbing with that hand. Because they made it seem like it was a more unique thing, which being a lefty is. And I was like, oh, did they mean to say left-handed? Because like you're facing someone and you're hitting them with your right hand. You're hitting them on their left and vice versa. So I think they
messed up.
They misphrased it there. Because we do see the guy who it is fighting off another guy and he's hitting with his left hand. And I was like, he's the killer. It's him.
It's him.
It's him. Yeah. Well, I won't give it a red flag because I think it was just a line.
An interesting note.
I think it was just a line mix up that they said right-handed, but I think they meant to say left-handed because the blows on the right side were more severe and had more strength to them. So the fatal blows on the left side are weaker, showing that the killer isn't comfortable using that hand. So it looks like, or someone who wasn't used to using their right hand. So he or she was trying to throw the team off by like doing it on both sides. So the stomach contents showed wine, strawberries, and chocolates. So that's obviously somebody's on a date. Or maybe they're just hanging out, having chocolate or strawberries on their own.
I would do that.
Yeah, I've done that. That's why I changed my mind. I was like, wait, I've done that. Did they say how they figured out it was strawberries and wine? Did they do like...
I think they tested the contents, and I think it came back as
just
that.
Sniff it?
One of our doctors has done that, and he was like, oh, he had red wine. I mean, red wine is a very distinctive smell.
Wanted to throw it up. And you can also...
And then he was like, oh, he had angel hair pasta, and I was like ready to leave the morgue.
No.
This is the same doctor that would definitely... He was the one that would have said the line earlier that was cringy.
Oh, the organ gods.
We love him. I love him dearly.
Yeah.
I would do anything for that man.
You can sometimes, yeah, so would I. You can sometimes still see, depending on how digested it is, like,
oh yeah, maybe it wasn't
food.
as digested, so they could see like strawberry bits.
Yeah, but they bring it in on like a petri dish.
It was just really funny to me.
It was like they dry it out, put it on a petri dish.
We put it in a little jar.
Yeah, we put it in like a 2-ounce jar. So the director of the convention had the victim over to his room at around 3 a.m. the night before to have wine and chocolate for a romantic date.
Oh my God.
Scandal.
So in the stab wounds, they found traces of obsidian, about 600 grams worth, and a magnesium firewood melt and obsidian knife, leaving only traces of a murder weapon.
Who just knows that off the top of their head, though?
People in bones.
Bones. Bones.
Do you remember learning about obsidian when you took whatever the course was about like firearms and like arrows?
Nope.
No, you didn't learn about that?
I probably did. I still remember it.
I remember that we learned about
this?
like wounds and different types of wounds and like the pattern that it makes on the body and like how
Yeah,
it's like
I remember
a stellate
that.
pattern and it's more indicative of like this type of weapon. And we learned about arrows and like they used obsidian way back when as arrowheads.
Oh, I didn't remember that part of it. I do remember that lecture, but I don't remember the bit about obsidian.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was like, oh my God, an arrow. And that's like the only thing I was thinking of.
Imagine if it was an arrow and you were right, Belle. That would have been awesome.
So Tess Brown, who is a bad novelist, who everyone seems to hate, who we met at the beginning of the convention, this was the woman that Dr. Hodgkins immediately was like, get away from me, bitch.
No, wait. Did he do that? It was, she's the bad novelist.
Oh no, she talked to Bones and Bones was like, get out of here.
Bones hates her because she writes bad forensic novels.
Yeah.
And gets a lot of things wrong. And then Hodgkins hated the other entomologist who ends up dead. She's an entomologist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in one of her recent books, she had an obsidian weapon. And Brown just happens to be a past lover of the director of the convention before he moved on to the victim as his lover, or like they were like
he gets around.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if they were actually like together, but they were like doing things together, but they weren't like in a romantic relationship.
He's literally just a guy.
Just a white man.
He's just a dude. Literally like
a white man.
A white man. No. Typical. Yeah, he's just a dude. They make him seem like he's a Casanova.
Not special.
He's just a guy. He's just not like anything against him. He's just a dude. And I'm like, damn, he's pulling all of these ladies and they're fighting over him.
But apparently, her next book is about a murder at a convention.
How convenient.
I know, very convenient. And they notice a discoloration on the ilium and only the ilium. And they were under the assumption that the killer used gasoline to ignite magnesium strips to cause the fire. But what if there was a what if that was a mask for a third igniting I don't like
accelerant.
Like a third accelerant. Like
who has all these accelerants?
There's so much going on.
Yeah, and we find
which is why it's so entertaining. And we're laughing about it.
When the killer is eventually revealed, we find out why there was so much going on.
Mm-hmm. which we'll explain later on. We'll get there.
But it's so insane how much is going on here.
So sulfuric acid and potassium chlorate are the perfect recipe for igniting magnesium strips. But what if there was another layer separated by aluminum foil? And aluminum foil was also found on the victim, because what else isn't found on the victim? Literally everything is found on this victim.
Okay, but why do they automatically assume that the aluminum foil wasn't part of the trash that was thrown on top of her?
But
the Band-Aid they can excuse.
Band-Aid, they were like, no!
Band-Aid with one of their own person's DNA on it. Like, oh, it's just a coincidence.
They're like, look at this aluminum foil. It means this. So the foil would create an ignition delay. Cue the little science experiment they perform in the lab that Dr. Hodgkins does, because he's still working on this case.
I was just going to say that. Guess who does the science experiment? Doctor. They're giving him accelerants in the lab. They're like, you're a murder suspect. Light this on fire.
Play around with some fire.
Yeah.
So the killer wouldn't need to be near the body then at the time of the fire. So none of the suspects have an alibi now, including Dr. Hodgkins.
Yeah. How convenient. But
there's more.
He's still on the case. They don't take him off yet. So there's a puncture on the anterior surface of the left fifth vertebral rib, and it was caused perimortem. So that is around the time of death. It's like very near the time of death. It's not quite like
post-mortem.
It's not quite post-mortem injury, but it's like very, very near the time of death. So it lines up with the obsidian knife wound on the fourth sternal rib on the left side, but this one has no traces of obsidian in it. So the obsidian knife wasn't used. Oh, sorry. So the obsidian knife was only used to cover up the initial stab wound. This is so.
It's like it goes so into depth.
Yeah. So they're going to make a microcell impression of the wound and hopefully be able to identify the weapon. So their weapon is a fancy new invention from the convention. A thermocouple made by one of the vendors who's been trying to make a name for himself and get known by this famous team. He's been like a fanboy this entire time. Him and one other guy.
Every chance he's like, hey, you want to use my product?
Yeah. So the thermocouple has a unique tip that matches the impression. He's also been trying to sell them on these new gloves he made, and there were traces of these gloves found on the victim. Carter, this vendor, also ordered obsidian about a month ago. His motive would be that getting rid of this victim who was stealing his designs to get revenge. So the reason that Hodgkins also hated her is because she stole, and they like went to college together or grad school together, and he talked about an idea that he had for an invention, and she stole the idea and got a patent and made like $1 million off of it. So that's why he hates her. And she apparently did the same thing to this guy. So he killed her for revenge, but he also wanted a chance to showcase his products to Bones' team and also show like basically how he could get away with murder, I think. Be like, I'm so good at forensics. Watch me get away with
I wanted
it.
to show you guys how good I was. And Bones is like, yeah, like we'll work together when you're in prison.
Yeah, Bones is like, you know what? Like, I game respect game. And Booth is like, are you crazy?
Booth is the only logical one during this questioning.
Yeah, it's wild. So, yeah, that's how it ends. Is like they catch this guy and he's just like, he like basically confesses like, oh, you got me. What gave it away? And she's like, oh, the obsidian and this you ordered a month ago. And then like a little bit of your glove was found in there. And like, he's like, man, all right, shouldn't have done that. And she's like, yeah. And
I know for next time.
Yeah, he talks about how he was like working on a new project. She's like, oh yeah, you'll have to send me info on it. And Booth is like, he murdered a woman and lit her on fire. And she's like, well, he confessed. And
yeah, Bones is like so sympathetic with this man.
Yeah, it's meant to be a comedic moment. And
then she goes on and like finishes her keynote speech, and she does her joke, and then she does a different joke, and Booth is the only one that laughs.
Yeah, it was
cute.
That
was a cute little moment.
It was cute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone gets a happy ending except for the woman who died.
So how many green flags and red flags? I think we ended with 4 red flags and 3 green flags.
Which is better than a lot of Bones episodes do.
Yeah.
To be fair.
We got to look at our last one, but I think our last one was like all red flags.
Yeah. I want to see how like what other seasons. I forget off the top of my head. Because this is one of the later seasons of Bone that we watched. Because I feel like some of the earlier seasons, I'm like, what is this made up technology that you're using?
They're trying to show, it's like, oh, we're so far advanced.
Yeah. They're just like clicking on their computer, enhance. And I'm like, what is happening right now?
But the true crime that we found, we were really interested in the whole storyline of she was writing a book about the murder at the convention and basically like writing. They thought she was like, they thought she was the killer and she was at this convention to get like inspiration to write her book.
She wasn't the killer, but
Romance author who apparently foretold of her crime in an essay titled How to Murder Your Husband to life in prison for the shooting death of her late spouse. I think his name is David. But anyway, Crampton Brophy, she was 71. She was found guilty of second-degree murder.
Brophy.
Oh, Daniel. I was close. Started with a D. She was found guilty of second-degree murder the previous month. A jury found that she shot her husband of 26 years in 2018 for a $1.5 million life insurance payout. Before her crime, she had been a self-published author whose works of steamy romance and suspense included novels such as, quote, The Wrong Husband or, end quote, The Wrong Lover. She clearly has
it's a romance
whole theme going on for her.
Forbidden love, yeah.
Her husband, her late husband, Daniel Brophy, was a chef and a respected teacher at the Oregon Culinary Institute. He was found shot twice in the kitchen of the institute in June 2018. The case attracted much attention for an essay that Crampton Brophy had written years before the crime titled How to Murder Your Husband. And she said, quote, "The thing I know about murder is that every one of us have it in him/her when pushed far enough." And she said in a now deleted post,
Yikes.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
She listed a number of ways to commit matricide, which is
when you kill your spouse. Yeah.
From guns and knives to poison and hitmen. Before writing, "It's easier to wish people dead than to actually kill them." And she added, "If murder is supposed to set me free, I certainly don't want to spend any time in jail." A judge ruled against admitting the essay as evidence at her trial because it was penned years before all of this. And it was like part of a writing seminar she was in.
I mean, I guess that's true. I mean, clearly she was convicted by a jury of her peers that she did this. But yeah, like there's so many people who write about like killing husbands and killing, and then like killing spouses, and then they're not like that wouldn't be evidence against them if they just wrote it. Yeah. But it's still crazy that she wrote this and then it happened.
But prosecutors did not need the text. They successfully argued that she had the motive and the means to murder her partner, showing the couple had fallen on hard times financially, and she stood to pocket a hefty insurance payout after his death. Crampton Brophy was seen driving to and from the institute at the time of the crime in surveillance footage shown in court, and although police never found the murder weapon, she was shown to have purchased a gun of the same make and model. Taking the stand in her own defense, the author claimed she had a, quote, memory hole from the morning of Brophy's death. She could not, however, deny it was her driving around the institute, and a jury of 12 found her guilty of second-degree murder after deliberating for less than 2 days, which I feel like that's kind of like an average time of deliberating.
From things that I've read, yeah. But I feel like my evidence for this is skewed because I only read about like the most extreme cases. So it's like they deliberated for 3 weeks and it's like, that's crazy. Like, yeah.
Her lawyer said they plan to appeal. Ahead of the sentencing, friends and family members of the late chef delivered statements. They said, "You opted to lie, cheat, steal, defraud, and ultimately kill the man that was your biggest fan." Brophy's son from a previous marriage said that you were to borrow from your catalog the wrong wife.
Yeah. So that's Nathaniel Stillwater. So that's Daniel Brophy's son. For a different marriage, not Nancy's son.
Mm-hmm.
That's so sad. Yeah. So according to the Wikipedia page of Daniel Brophy, during the investigation, Crampton Brophy, so that's Nancy, had told investigators that during the initial investigation that she had walked the dogs and had a shower on the morning of the incident. And in 2020, investigators found traffic camera footage that we talked about that showed her driving to and from the Culinary Institute in a 13-minute window where they know the homicide occurred. So Nancy amended her story and said that she had no memory of such a drive and that she was likely on a coffee run and forgot about it due to the stress of the day's event. So when she was put on trial in April 2022, the prosecution assembled a case built on circumstantial evidence that said that she was the murderer. And they argued that her false account of her whereabouts on the morning of the murder indicated that she was untrustworthy. For motive, prosecutors alleged that Nancy was in financial distress and killed her husband for several life insurance policies, all totaling around $1.5 million, as well as the sole ownership of their $300,000 house. Forensic evidence indicated that Daniel Brophy had been shot by 2 bullets from a Glock pistol. And the prosecution also entered into evidence, as you said earlier, that she had purchased a gun of the same make and model. So they also said that Nancy had purchased a receiver blank kit from parts on the internet, and she conceded that she had bought the slide and a barrel for a Glock pistol on eBay.
Which is crazy.
I hate that. I hate that so much. So she contended that the purchase had been made with her husband's support and that she had given the gun to her husband to protect himself while looking for mushrooms, and that the gun components were for research on a new novel involving a woman who carefully acquired gun parts. But she is currently serving life in prison as of June 14th, 2022.
You need to take this gun. There's mushrooms.
I don't think he was shooting the mushrooms. I don't know where he was looking for mushrooms. Yeah, taken out of context. That sounds a little weird.
She obviously didn't get away with murder.
No. Yeah, that is wild. That whole story. And and I just feel so bad for Daniel's family.
I know.
And then
I feel
she's trying to play amnesia that she didn't know where she was.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
allegedly.
the worst part.
Allegedly.
I feel like that's the worst part that a lot of these families go through, that the person that did the crime, they're like, oh, I have no memory. I'm not competent to take the stand. We know what you did. Just own up to it.
Yeah. I listen to My Favorite Murder sometimes, and Georgia Hartstark, one of the hosts, said one time, she's like, I wish when people were on trial at the end of the trial, they just have to tell us. At the end, even if they got away with it, did you do it? Did you really do it? Did you just get away with it? And I kind of get that because I'm like
blink twice if you did it.
Yeah, right. Did you do it? Did you actually? Yeah. So that concludes our episode. This wild episode of Bones.
So this wild, extremely entertaining episode.
This is what other episodes of Bones have we watched? Do you remember? No, that wasn't an episode of Bones.
What are you thinking of?
There was a show where somebody was eating toes. The title of our episode is literally called Snacking on Toes. And I think that was after we had just watched Bones. I forget which show that was, but I thought for a minute it was Bones. And I was like, and we found out later the person was being force fed the toes in the show.
That was so far back in my memory.
It was wild. But I think that was right after our one of our episodes of Bones that we titled She's Everything. He's just Booth.
Yeah.
He's just Ken.
Was this the one where they were trying to hide evidence?
Yes, that was the one where it was her colleague was suspected of murder. Shocker. And they hid evidence. Shocker. They just let Hodgkins was a suspect 3 separate times in this episode. That he kept looking more and more sus, and they kept letting him do stuff.
They're no, he's a good guy.
They kept letting him handle it. And there is definitely another episode of Bones that I remember watching at least the beginning of. I think it was when I was home visiting my family, and my mom might have had Bones on. And the intro of the episode was Hodgkins taking the stand as an expert witness. And then the defense attorney comes up and was like, is it true that you had a relationship with the victim in the past? And he's like, yeah, I did. And nobody in the office knew. And they're like, what the hell? Why would you work this slept with the victim. You should immediately have been taken out of the
loves
case.
his job
And
so
then he's
much.
like, and then he immediately became a suspect at the start of the episode. And I was like, all right, that's one of the 3 times that you're talking about being a suspect. Oh my God. Well, thank you all for hanging out with us, talking about this crazy episode. If you want to hear more, check us out on Spotify or Apple Music, and also check us out on Young Junk's YouTube page or
Our own YouTube page.
YouTube page now.
We're
Inside the
trying
Morgue.
to build it. Go follow us
Yeah.
and subscribe, like, comment.
Yeah, follow us there. You can follow us on Instagram at Inside the Morgue Pod, POD. And you can send us DMs with any show suggestions. That's hard to say.
I know. We would love to hear more show suggestions from you guys, like what you guys want to hear from us, what you guys want us to watch.
Yeah.
I know somebody said Criminal Minds, so we're planning for our next recording to do a Criminal Minds episode.
And whoever had that suggestion, if you have a specific episode,
let us know.
Let us know. But we're shopping around for episodes. We have one in mind. But if you have another one specifically you want us to listen to, let us know. Yeah. So thanks again for listening. What was it? Total of
4 red flags, 3
green flags. So unfortunately, this episode of Bones does not pass in our terms. But it was pretty close.
Mm-hmm. It was close. It was close in the first half.
Close, yeah. It would have been a tie if it wasn't for Hodgkins. Freaking
just continuously working on this case.
Continuously working on a case where he was a person of interest. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time for a brand new dissection.
Bye.
Bye.
Young John!